Let your life be a constant search for the truth, and it will be a worth living. Good morning, everyone. With these words of Mother, I, Dr. Papri Das, on behalf of School of IT, Oro University, extend to you all a very warm and hearty welcome. Today we have with us an eminent speaker, a person of innovation, Mr. Revant Kumar. Mr. Revant Kumar, co-director at Startup Grind, Hyderabad chapter and founder at Unturtle Consulting, is a tech and startup enthusiast. He has delivered more than 50 talks and workshops at various engineering and management institutions on technologies like blockchain, AI, and IoT. Also takes faculty, professional, and student development activities. He previously was a senior engineer at Mindtree Limited and Pegasystem with around 5 years of industry experience. Dear participant, I hope you will enjoy the session and gain maximum out of it. Over to you, Mr. Revant.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hope you guys are able to hear me. So my name is Rivan. Thank you so much for an amazing introduction of mine. So yeah, I think I can skip 2 slides because it is all about my introduction. So you just reduced my work. So this is the skills and expertise that I got. So I'm basically I'm very inclined towards technology, and I'm just fascinated about how things work with technology, how much influence they are just making on our lives. So thank you so much for this, and I'll keep it straight to the point, and we'll just directly jump on to blockchain. I don't say that, but because blockchain is not something like something people think that, okay, what is blockchain? Is it some new technology? Is it what's happening? There's a lot of chaos and a lot of gap between what exactly it is and what we are thinking. So even I felt the same when I was totally new to blockchain. I learned blockchain on my own. Like, it is totally open source, so you get access everywhere, and there is a lot of content which was over internet. So I just learned like that on my own, and it is very simple. It is already existing. We know everything. It is just a few changes and tweaks around how we store the information. Before even going there, before even talking about technical terms, okay, so we have this habit of maintaining ledgers, right? Like you maintain an account book where you just write transactions in it. So we used, even our banks used it, like previously when there is no internet, when there is no access to it properly, and when we weren't using any computers at our banks and even at our homes, we used to just write transactions on a ledger, and we used to believe the ledger, right? So that was the culture. And later that, of course, there are a lot of things which got evolved eventually, and we started using huge machines where we started keeping information, and there is a kind of huge transformation in how we store the information and how we retrieve the information. So if you talk from a simple computer standpoint, you store that some information inside your hard disk or any memory, and you just access that information. Later that, you started storing huge information in a server and you access it. And then you started storing information on a cloud and you started accessing it. But there are a lot of disadvantages and a lot of things happened around this, a lot of limitations, and there are huge problems around it. Storing information at a single data store, which is huge. I'll tell you how. Aren't we giving a lot of information each and every day to all the bigger organizations just from your phone? Aren't we giving all our information or data? So if you're just using 1 GB of data per day, means you just exchanged 1 GB of your personal information to all the applications which are already installed on your phone. Of course, there are few utility applications which you are making use of. At the same time, thanks to deep learning and machine learning, it is helping them to actually understand you. So now the business is all about understanding people. So how do you understand people? Just by studying them. How do you study them? Just by understanding the patterns and the way they're interacting with the machines. So this data is pretty much, what you can say is like, it is pretty much kind of very valuable, precious, and also it is very important from a personal standpoint. It shouldn't be compromised. That is very important. And there are a lot of instances where it got compromised, and there was a huge impact at a global level. So take the Facebook scandal. Every other day we are hearing this news, like, okay, the data of these people got compromised. And so why is that happening is because we are giving a central authority to these organizations by giving this whole huge information to all of those people, and then we just are giving the information, and if something wrong happens, we are just blaming them. But the mistake is with us. Why are we even allowing them, or why are we even trusting them? Why are you even trusting all these banks, all these and of course it is happening in our financial system as well. If there is a bank, and if you store some your account is nothing but a piece of information. Your account information that you access over internet, it is just a piece which is stored on the database of a particular bank. So you're giving the whole authority to them. Of course, your life is getting comfortable because you're just making a IMPS transfer which just happens in 1 second, and your life is comfortable. But what if that bank just erases your information? Or you already stored 5 lakh rupees in that bank, and they just say that, sorry, we blew up the database, or it got hacked. So what happens after that? You just stay silent. We just stayed silent. That's it. So the solution for that could be, why should you even give authority to a single entity in the whole system? Why should we do that? Why should you even store all the information at one place? So this thought came from there. So the blockchain's thought actually came from this philosophy, where why can't we decentralize the information? Why can't we remove the authority on our data with a single person? So being this said, just carry this thought, and we'll talk from a very simple example, right? So Ledger, if you observe all the data that we are storing, be it bank transactions, be it movies on Netflix, be it videos on YouTube, be it music on your Spotify, be it anything basically. So all this information is basically getting stored on a ledger. So this used to look like this in our olden days, and you can just draw parallels between this and the information that you're putting on your database, right? So that is one thought that you need to keep with yourself. So let us discuss an example, right, about this ledger. Very small, very smaller one. So there are two persons, okay, let's say Vikram and Vamsi. So Vikram actually Vamsi is actually a very good friend of Vikram, and Vamsi gave money to him. Okay, Vamsi gave Vikram like 50,000 rupees in 2010, and in 2010 there is no internet banking. Let's say it is 2000, right, or 2001, and there was no internet banking, and people used to keep account books and ledgers, right? So he just recorded a transaction that he gave money in 2001 to this person, right? Vamsi gave money to Vikram. Isn't it a transaction? And isn't it data? Yes, it is. So it is just a simple piece of information where there will be some sender information, receiver information, when the transaction has happened, when did that actually, and what is the context behind it. So, and as we are storing a lot of information on our ledgers, the same thing is happening in our databases as well. If that book, the ledger that Vikram or Vamsi is maintaining, is compromised or burnt or even manipulated, your information is gone. And you need to understand that if a transaction happens, be it a finance transaction or anything, that is forever. In real time or in real life, if you gave 100 rupees to someone, if you donated it, that is permanent, right? That is a permanent transaction. But why are these books that we are maintaining unpermanent, and why are they very vulnerable to security attacks? So why can't Vamsi's book just teared off and burnt and erased, or someone can come and manipulate the transaction? It is very easy, right? So it can be done. If the book, if if the book is lost, he just lost the record of all the transactions or all the information, which is very crucial. The same thing happens in case of, the same thing may happen and happened in case of various different organizations, right? To solve this problem, why are you just keeping one book? Why are you giving authority to your bank to store your information? Why don't you just make a new approach where you have multiple places of storing the information, and you store various different copies of all this information at various different spots, and access this information like whenever you want, however you want. And for those people who are actually storing the information, you pay some transaction fee to them instead of giving that to your bank. So what would happen is, in that case, even if your data store or data center is totally blew up, even if it is totally blown up, right, you can still have the copies of the information somewhere, right? So keeping it in a very, and another use case that we can talk about is that the central authority, right? So if two persons are transacting something, okay, it can be, you can take various examples. Your transactions always be like only in between two different persons, right? If it is finance, so you just exchange money. If it is music, you take music from your Spotify, you listen to it and you enjoy. So in that case also there is a two-way communication there. So why don't we just if you're listening to a track on Spotify, what does that mean? You're just using information which is uploaded by an artist who's sitting somewhere, and Spotify is actually charging you. If you take Spotify Premium, if you want a better quality of it, it's charging you or making money out of you just for providing that information to you, right? What if I just pay the artist directly instead of paying Spotify? What if I can do or go with that approach? So let us see that. So blockchain is all about just destroying the centralized authority and decentralizing everything. Let us see this very simple use case. It is a very simple land transaction, right? So previously, if you take our land transactions, right, all this information is basically stored in some government database where they'll be having few survey numbers and door numbers, and they'll be having the whole record of this particular land, right? And previously books, so we used to keep those in books, and that data is very vulnerable. If I have a document, right, a document which is an original which is issued by the central government of India, and if in that document it says that the land belongs to me, this number of land belongs to you, means it is mine. And there are a lot of scenarios we see where people actually come up with duplicate of these of these documents. So how to avoid those duplications? Your blockchain answers it. So how and all, we'll see that. So your blockchain will basically consist of blocks of information. So don't literally look at it like a block. So it is just a piece of information, that's it, just like a row on your ledger. So you can draw analogy like this. A ledger is nothing but a blockchain. A ledger, blockchain, and each and every row in your ledger is nothing but each and every block in a blockchain. Okay, and moreover, this ledger don't stay at one place. Your blockchain don't stay at one place. Your ledger here, in this case, is a shared ledger. Means this information will be available in a secured manner, in an encrypted manner, at various different spots. And even your blockchain will be available at various different places, so that your blockchain is also called as a shared ledger. And this information will be available at multiple spots, and stored very securely. Even if one spot is down or one spot is corrupted, you can still retrieve the information from other spot. So, and how do you store the information, right? So here in your blockchain, your information will be stored like in blocks in a secured manner, and you'll be having this information forever. So once a block is created, once a piece of information is created and stored at various different spots, that is forever. Your information will die only if all the participants in the network dies, right? Means every system or every computer must be blown up. Only then you'll be your complete data will be erased. Till that, your data will be available. Just imagine you stored a land information, a land record, and that land cost really 1 crore rupees somewhere in a very vulnerable database. So if you just if simple data erasal happens, the 1 crore of information is gone. That is the kind of seriousness that we have. What if it is your healthcare information? What if someone is diagnosed with HIV, which is a very private information, and that shouldn't be going anywhere, right? So only that patient must be having the whole authority of that information. So how do you achieve it? So these blocks are actually information stores which are built in a very secured manner, and the information access will be given to the people who owns it, but not to everyone. If they want to, you may ask me, sir, I may need this diagnosis information of a diagnosis that I got at a hospital. I need to share that with a doctor. Yes, you can share it only on approval. That kind of security levels will be offered by your blockchain, and your information will be stored eventually. So if you see here in this example, you can compare this with your diagnosis report. You can compare this with your bank account report. So it works like the same. If a transaction is recorded in 1900, the owner is Adam, and the owner got changed to someone else, the transaction will be recorded and stored forever here, all right, in 1900. If on the same land, if the land is sold to someone else in 1930, even that will be stored and it will be recorded forever. And even it happens in 2007, that will be stored and it is recorded forever. So what is the benefit of this? Is that you can have track of the information permanently, and this is called immutability. Okay, this is one of the major features of blockchain. Immutable means you really can't tamper it, right? So this is one example. We are going to look at this at a broader level. So your ledger, which looks like this, so you can compare this to your databases which are existing now. You can compare this to the cloud. Web 2.0 will be broken into various different spots, various different computers, and all these computers at like various different geolocations will be storing your information, right? So someone can sit and operate his computer and make his computer live for 24/7. That can be acting as your database. Okay, your information will be stored there. The same information will be stored at someone who's sitting in Philippines, right? So you may ask me, sir, why should we even store this information at various different multiple copies? There could be a data problem, data storage issue. There could be a redundancy in the information. Why are we keeping the same information everywhere? It is not just storing the information. All these nodes will help you to validate the information, right? If Vamsi gave some amount to Vikram, and Vikram says that no, the transaction didn't happen, because Vamsi is having only one book, right? One book or one transaction store. What if you included 10 people and tell everyone that whenever you give money, and tell every one of these 10 people that, okay, I'm giving, let's say I'm Vamsi, I'm giving 50,000 rupees to Vamsi, and you're all the people who are like trustees here. So if Vamsi comes, if Vikram comes with a dispute, all these people are there to validate the transaction, whether it is correct or not. You are doing the same approach. Here, all these computers at various different spots will help you to validate the transaction. Even if one computer or one data store, actually these computers are called nodes, or you can call them as miners also. These are called miners who will help you to store their information. And your information and their information, all this information will be stored across this whole network, right? So they'll come into picture and they'll help you whether the transaction is valid or not, right? We'll get on to this in depth. So this is how a normal blockchain life cycle works. So these blocks are nothing but pieces of information, right? If you are doing various different transactions, all these transactions will be stored over here. And whenever you want to add a new block, right, whenever you want to add a new piece of information to the chain, right, you need to solve a cryptographic puzzle, and then only then you will be allowed to create a block. And that cryptographic puzzle will be based on, and that puzzle will actually help you to store your transaction information in an encrypted manner. All right. And there is something called proof of work, which will make sure that, and obviously whenever you're trusting these 10 people, these 10 people must be trustworthy, right? That is the basic sense. So you need to trust these people. So proof of work is something which will allow you to do that. So proof of work is nothing but, okay, if I'm storing your transaction, means I must be legit. If I'm storing Vamsi's transaction at my computer, I must be legit. Vamsi can't give his transaction information to each and everyone. So proof of work is something which takes care of it. And at an outset, this is how it looks like. Your centralized ledgers look like this, where your bank will be there and you'll be having various different clients and account holders, and it will be having a centralized repository of information, right? That is one. In your distributed case, there won't be a centralized authority, and only one piece of information will be shared across various different nodes, and these nodes are nothing but your 10 friends whom you can trust. All right. So this is the whole life cycle of the blockchain. So when users initiate, let's say I initiated a transaction, okay, so this transaction will be given to so in a conventional manner, how it happens, whenever I transact money over a bank, I just initiate the transaction. Your bank validates whether this account holder is a right person or not. It will validate your username, password, and the account balance that you have. And then if it is legit, only then the other person will be credited with the amount. If not, they won't. It will just say that the transaction is valid, or there must be some problem with it. Even in this case, you need to do the same, but you need to remove the bank here. You need to remove a centralized authority here, and instead of storing this transaction information at a single point, you basically broadcast this information to various different points, which are called nodes. And these nodes will validate the transaction. So one transaction will be validated by multiple people, and all these multiple people, actually any one of them can create a block. Creating a block is nothing but validating a transaction. And moreover, a transaction which is initiated don't get valid until it is stored in a chain. Okay. And as I told you, if you remember, you can visualize your blockchain as a ledger. Okay, and each and everything is a block. So your transactions will be stored in these blocks, which are highly secure, and these blocks are interconnected. Let us see what exactly happens in a block. So this is so if someone asks you what is a blockchain, so this is what you need to tell them. So just tell them that this is a distributed ledger or decentralized ledger, where the transaction between two parties are completely verifiable and they are stored in a permanent way. So how does this make any sense? So the problem with your centralized systems is trust. Why should you even trust your bank? Why can't they tamper your information? So which takes us to the decentralized system. So if a transaction is done, it is totally permanent, right? So till the time the other person sells it back. So these permanent transactions should be stored permanently. So to make it happen, so your blockchain will have these three major features. One is distributed or decentralized. All your information will be available everywhere, and this information is immutable, means you can't erase the information, and it is for everyone. It is for everyone, literally everyone. Why should you even pay, or why should you even maintain a minimum balance of your account where it is your own money, right? If it is your own salary account, why should someone dictate saying that, okay, you should maintain 3,000 rupees in your bank account? That is not fair. And moreover, they are making money out of you. So why don't you just break the system and do a peer-to-peer transaction without involving any third party? You may ask me, sir, we are storing this information at various different nodes, right? But can't they be third party? No. A third party, you can say them as a third party. They are just storing your information and they don't be having any authority on the information. And no single party will be having an authority on the information. It is with everyone. everyone can have it, everyone can actually store it. So looking at what exactly a block is, so what exactly a block consists of. So your block consists of data, hash, and previous block hash. From a technical standpoint, hash is a simple cryptographic key which acts as security. Hash of the previous block will be stored in this block. So that is how you establish interrelation between each and every block. Interrelation between, so it is like in a ledger, so each and every row is interrelated. Even if one row is deleted, you make that one row dependent on the other, so your other row will be affected, and it is a chain reaction that every other row will be affected, and you will be raising a red flag saying that okay, there is something happening with this row or with this block. Someone is trying to hack your system, or someone is trying to modify your information. We'll look at that, how that exactly happens. Your data can have this kind of information. This is a simple transaction, someone sending money to someone, right? And it can also have a simple presentation or a music file or a video file of some size and some date of creation. So you can also have hash. Hash is kind of this offers a complete security to your complete block, and hash is a combination of your block's information and everything. So what is the significance of hash is, it is very interesting. So this is normally how your blockchain looks like. Like you'll be having 3 different blocks. Let's say you have 3 different blocks, and green, yellow, and red. So can you see this chain? Why is it called chain? I'll justify that now. So every block will be having these 2. So this is hash, is basically the key information inside a block. As I told you, it is like a fingerprint, right? It is like a unlock or lock key for it. So your hash of this block is basically stored in the next block, and the hash of this block, the second block 6BQ1, will be stored in the as a previous block hash of this. So, and you create a mechanism in such a way that if this hash is compromised, okay, your hash value is basically generated with the data of that particular block. As I told you, your block will be having data, hash, and previous block hash, and your hash is basically dependent upon the data. If data is getting changed, your hash value will change. The hash of this is basically the previous hash of the next block, which is the red block. So if some hacker, this guy, tries to change information, this hash will be changed, and if this changes, this will impact the hash of this. In other way, to crack the information which is, or the data which is stored in this block, he needs to crack this hash. To get this hash, basically you need to crack the hash of this. So it is a chain reaction where if you want to attain information of one block, you need to attain information of the other. To attain information of that one, you need to break the information of each and every subsequent block. So you make the life of a hacker very tough. And also, and we are saying that a lot of there are lakhs of hacking attacks happen on these banks each and every day. You can avoid everything, all those attacks, with your blockchain by keeping your information at a blockchain. Even though your information is hacked, let's say, of course, you're stopping the entry point, or you're just stopping this hacker at the gate itself. Let's say even he enters, even he cracks the information. Remember that your information is stored at various different spots. Even if the data is compromised at a single spot, you still have 99 other spots to retrieve that information back. So that is how you make your data very secure, stored in a very secured way. And there are a few things called consensus and peer-to-peer work. So as I told you, to store a particular transaction, you need to do this cryptographic puzzle, and that cryptographic puzzle will help you to create the hash, and it takes 10 minutes to create that cryptographic puzzle. Yes, you're listening right. And as I told you, cryptographic puzzle will validate your transaction. What does that mean? It takes 10 minutes to validate your transaction. So it is not like your IMPS. So for a transaction to happen or to get confirmed, it takes 10 minutes on blockchain. You may ask me, this is a bad user experience, but if you want your data to be very secure, if you want to attain those trust levels, you need to compromise on your comfort. right? Now we got very comfortable and our data is getting compromised, and this is the opposite of it. Your data won't be compromised, just wait for 10 minutes. All right. And there are few blockchains which may take 20 or even an hour to validate these transactions, right? And the process of validating these transactions and storing these transactions over a network is called mining. Okay, you should have heard Bitcoin mining. So as I told you, all your 10 friends who are in middle of you and your friend, when you're doing a transaction, these people actually do something called mining. And this mining is nothing but doing a proof of work and creating a block and validating your transaction and storing the transaction everywhere. And you get reward for this mining, and these nodes or miners can make money out of this. That is how you dig your Bitcoin, you dig your cryptocurrency. It is just like gold. And who gets more of these resources, like more of the Bitcoin? Who is efficient in validating the transactions? If there is, out of these 10 friends, one is being very active, one is being very trustworthy, and he's like, okay, now you did the transaction, I'm validating this. If someone comes and says that this is not valid, though it is valid, I'll help you with it. So that guy gets the reward. So that is how it works. So across your network, everyone tries to mine more Bitcoin by storing your information. They're helping you out, right? So why not pay them? That is how it works. For each and every block creation, it takes 10 minutes of time, and that is for a purpose. So we create a mechanism in such a way that to create a block, it takes 10 minutes. In the same way, to break a block, it takes 10 minutes. What does that mean is, if a hacker tries to break into a block, it takes 10 minutes of time for him. Meanwhile, there is something called consensus, which will make sure it will check every time, like each and every second, it will have a check, and it will make sure that your chains are not compromised. As I told you, your information will be everywhere, right? So your copies of blockchain will be everywhere. Even if one blockchain is getting compromised, it can take 10 minutes for a hacker to crack into it. So meanwhile, you can just do a mitigation and replace that block which is getting corrupted with a new block, with a new copy of it, because you already have the copies with other people, right? You just get the copy of it and replace this chain. Let's say node number 55 is getting attacked. I'm getting attacked, and I just found that, okay, someone is trying and it is taking 10 minutes of it. They didn't change the information yet. So meanwhile, if that vulnerability is identified, I can just get the copy of the from some other node, and I replace my information with that information. So I can mitigate the hacking attacks. So this is how it would work.
Revan sir?
Yes?
Yeah, I have an announcement for all the participants.
Yeah, sure.
We will share a link at 11:45, a Google form that will be for your certificate. And when you will fill this Google form, we will share your e-certificate on that particular email ID. And at 11:45, we will start the question answer, and our panelists will take all the questions from Q&A.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah. So whenever a new block get created, so this block is nothing but your information. So that information will be stored and kept at each and every different spot. Even if some block is getting compromised, you can just retrieve the information from other end. So that is how it works. And consensus is an algorithm, or it's a mechanism which will make sure every time, and it is very important that we call it as shared ledger, right? And every time you need to make sure this ledger is the same at each and every person. And consensus algorithm is something which will help you doing it, right? Even if this guy is, let's say, is not active for a while, or his chain is corrupted, his information is corrupted, then your consensus will basically help you to retrieve information from this person or any other person in the network and replace that information at this person, at this particular node or a miner. All right. So that is how it works. So even it will make sure to ignore any kind of hacking attacks. So make sure without any central authority. So peer-to-peer network, you can call it as a peer-to-peer network, and your consensus will make sure without any central authority your data is secured and it is safe at each and everyone's hand, right? So yes, this is how normally your mining spots would look like. So as I told you, nodes, right? Your miners. So this is how your mining spots would look. They will be having a lot of processing and computation power. Just imagine the kind of information that you need to store. So how many transactions you produce per day, and you need to process all those transactions and store. You need to run cryptographic puzzles. You need to do all these operations and store them. So you need to have a very high-end computation power to achieve it. So let us look at few use cases. So, and these are various different cryptocurrencies that you have. So I will share you the references for this. You can just have a look. eNotary is one of the major use case for your blockchain. So eNotary is something. What is a notary? First of all, it is kind of an agreement between two people. So agreements are permanent till the time they get modified, and they must be validated by each and every person, and they must be open to each and every party. It shouldn't be at one place, and it shouldn't be modified by a central authority or a single person. So eNotaries are I can call it as smart contracts. There is something called smart contracts where those contracts are like agreements between those people, various different people, and these contracts are just simple programs which are stored inside your blocks. And as I told you, your blocks, once a block is created, is permanent. So these contracts will be permanent forever, so that even if there is any dispute between two different parties, you can refer to these contracts and make sure there is no dispute. All right, the same works with just like your land records. Okay, so not only just humans, not only just transactions or the information which is created by humans, you can also store. It is all about the information storage. You're just changing the way you're storing the information. So you can get information from your sensors, right? Just take an application of IoT where your sensors basically generate a lot of information. I will give you an example. What about your food industry? How many of us are very sure that whatever you're eating is legit? It is coming from a right manufacturer. How are you making sure? Is it any central repository is there any website which is giving you a legit information? Even if it is giving a legit information, how can you trust it? Because it is claimed by some person who's providing this whole supply chain, right? So if you talk about a commodity, so it goes in various different phases. It is manufactured by someone, distributed by someone, marketed by someone, and sold by someone at a retail store. So these product life cycles can be stored on your blockchain, because once a block is created, remember, once a block is created, that information is permanent. So once a manufacturer manufactures something, okay, let's say there is a packet of milk. What is the source of it? So manufacturer recorded something on the blockchain. This is the ID of this packet, and this is the milk which we acquired from this particular spot, and it is totally organic. He approved it. The same ID or the same information or the same product should come to you as a consumer. So the whole product life cycle can be tracked on a blockchain, because no one can modify the information. No one can go back and modify the information which is created by a manufacturer, because it is already stored cryptographically and stored at various different nodes. And as I told you, there is no central authority, right? So a distributor or a manufacturer can't just go and change the information which is already created. Can you draw some analogy here? What about patient 0 of COVID? What happened with him? What is the legit information about that particular person? What is the blood sample of that guy? How exactly that happened? No one is having a clear idea on the information. But we are actually we are having that entitlement to know that information, because we are getting affected. Our lives are at risk. If that information is available, if each and every person's information or each and every COVID patient's information is available and open to everyone with legit information, so no one can modify it. So if some country uploads an information of this, and if there is something which they want to cover up, or if they want to modify that information, they can't, because it is already uploaded, it is already available to the open network. So information is everything, and even to run and create an antiviral drug, you need to have a proper database of the whole patients, right? What are the patterns, what are the symptoms, what is the how they what is the whole life cycle of that patient for the 14 days or 1 month. So that kind of sensitive information can also be stored, and you can make sure that information is secured and not changed by any country or any authority. Even your countries are centralized authorities, governments are centralized authorities, they can take decisions in their favor. You should make it open. Now every system is closed. Blockchain will help you to make systems open and give it to everyone, and everyone is equal. So that is how. So, and of course, information is everywhere. So if you make information centralized, and if you make your information decentralized, using IoT to just track the whole product life cycle, where it got packed, the labeling part and everything, and it is totally automated. You can extend your deep learning and deep learning or AI applications, because even your artificial intelligence need to have legit information, which increases the accuracy and efficiency of the system that you're developing. Blockchain will help you to store those kind of huge data sets. And also your IoT requires a lot of information, right? It takes a lot of information from sensors and robots. So that information you can store it over a blockchain. There is one thing that you need to understand. As I told you, you may get a doubt saying that, sir, you're keeping information open. So what if someone modifies it? We make sure that information is open, but you can't tamper it. You can't modify it. You can see it, but you can't modify it. It is read only. Of course, there are a few blockchains which are like public. You can look at the information, but you can't change it. There are private blockchains where you give access to only few people or the authorities who should own it, who are the owners of it. You can work it in different ways. So smart contracts are simple programs, or the kind of agreements which are stored over a blockchain. Just like the way you're storing your bank transactions, you can store these contracts as well. So there are various different tools. So they just make sure your contracts or your process is basically permanent and secure. Okay, one example is that crowdfunding, or you can take an example of a simple e-commerce site. I'll end it with this example so that we'll take doubts, and if there is some clarifications, I'll be taking it. So if you're a person who wants to get some goods from your shop, so how your smart contract works is you keep this smart contract as a simple condition. Okay, only when the product is received to me after I send money to this third party, so this smart contract will store your money and say that, okay, say this person who is running the shop, that okay, your money is with me, just send the product back to that person, then you'll be getting the money. So you're keeping a trustworthy third party which will make sure that this transaction, whole cycle of the transaction, is very trusty. All right, so this is one of the common example for a smart contract. The same goes with your music applications. The smart contracts will basically help you to do transactions and make sure everyone is on the same page, and to just offer transparency, immutability, and decentralized stuff, right? So these three are the main features, and the technology ability of this can revolutionize any kind of business. And we are already seeing a lot of businesses are moving to give the customers that levels of trust. They are moving from storing the information in a centralized manner to a distributed manner, because it doesn't mean that you break all these centralized powers, right? So these guys can adapt new technology like blockchain, where they will just change the approach of they storing the information, and they just use a distributed network to do it. Right. So that's that. I think I took 45 minutes of continuous talk. So I'll just take doubts if anyone got it. So I'll just try to address it. Yeah.
Very good morning, sir.
Yeah. Good morning.
Very
yes.
good morning. I, Dr. Anush Sharma. I'm a director in Engineering College, Uttarakhand.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Being a panelist, can I take one question?
Yeah, definitely, sir. Please.
How's the blockchain differ from distributed database, and what will be the size of distributed ledger?
Yeah. So good question. So this is a common confusion everyone would get, because if I'm talking about distributed, we are already having distributed databases by using big data and all.
Okay.
We are just segregating the information to run this indexing and making the whole process very optimized. So the difference here is your distributed database is ultimately owned by a single entity, right?
Okay.
So if you're saying, let's say you're talking about a customer CRM, okay, where all your customer information will be stored. You store it in a distributed manner at various different servers, and to make sure the clustering is happening and all that. But here, in this case, there won't be a central authority. So there won't be a central authority which will maintain these distributed databases. So your information will be stored at various different spots, and each and every party is not related to others. Right?
Okay.
So information is totally decentralized. So decentralization is a term which would be more apt than distributed, because distributed is something which is kind of get a little confusing. But decentralizing information means you won't be having a single authority. In case of distributed databases, you'll be having an admin who will be having authority on the complete information that you're storing over there.
And what will be the size of distributed ledger?
It depends on how many nodes you have. So how many miners you have. It can be infinite. Basically, it can be infinite. You may ask me, sir, it can't be infinite because there must be a limitation. And if you ask me what is the limitation, computation power. You need to have, of course, you need to create multiple copies of the information, and you need to have the storage devices and processors which must be taking care of this information, right? So if I want to become a node or a miner, I need to have significant amount of computation power, which can store some terabytes of information, because I'm storing all this information at my end. So it can be a small, so your decentralized system can be limited, or your decentralized system can be infinite. And moreover, as you can make money out of this by being a miner, people are now investing a lot on becoming a single standalone node. So it depends. It's infinite, basically. You can call it as infinite, because it depends on the computation power that we are generating. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome, sir. Yeah. Can we make? I'm randomly seeing it. Okay. If anyone can ask questions, you can go on. Yeah. I think I see a lot of questions. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes. I'm just looking at it. So okay, let me take those. I'll take few.
Yeah.
Computation power. Actually, your block, as I told you, you'll be having multiple nodes. You have 10 different friends now. So all these 10 different friends need to maintain your books, a book, right? And they need to store your information. What is that book? That is nothing but a huge storage space. You need to maintain it. You need to process the blocks and all that. So you need to have a lot of computation power. That is one limitation. So having a lot of computation power is one. And to run all these machines, I think I shown you this example, right? A simple mining spot which would look like this, which would look like a data center. So to maintain this, you need to have lots of power, and it generates a lot of heat. So and there is one huge drawback for blockchain. If every system moves to blockchain, you won't be having domestic power supply. It won't be enough. All the power supply will go to the commercial purpose. So that is one limitation. And to save money on the cooling systems, a lot of these blockchain nodes are getting established near poles. They'll generate a lot of heat. Global warming. Yes, these are major drawbacks. Very major drawbacks. When it comes to information security, I don't say that it is ideal, but it can offer like 100 times more trust than any other system that we are having currently, any other centralized system that we are having.
What is the difference between private and public blockchains?
Private blockchains are like you give access, you won't expose the information inside a block. So you will be giving, there is something called private key and public key, where let's say there is a you want to store information of a particular bank or a simple organization. So few organizations can't expose their information out. They can't do it, but they want to make sure that their data is always safe. So they implemented decentralized system instead of storing it in a centralized system. In those cases, to all the people who needs to get access to it, they give private keys, and they won't be in a public domain. So let's say like Ethereum and all, Bitcoin, Ethereum, these are all public blockchains. They will even show the transactions out, how much money is getting transferred and all that. So that can be totally given out with a public key. So, and these private chains will be having a public key and a private key. So with a public key, anyone can now access the information, and that key is nothing but your hash. All right. So, and coming to the private key, that will be accessed by only the person who owns the information. Right. So private blockchains, you can just say like they are under a single entity, but they don't own the information. Public blockchains are not under any single entity, but even in that case, no one owns the information.
Is it possible to double spend in a blockchain system?
Yeah, very good question. Double spend is actually a very big problem. So someone can actually do it. So your consensus and smart contracts will come into play in that case. Your consensus will make sure the blocks are legit and there are no duplicate blocks which are created. And moreover, I often get this question where will a transaction be stored in two different blocks? No. A transaction will be stored in one block. It doesn't mean that only one transaction gets stored in a block. Right? You can have multiple transactions stored in a block. So double spend can be avoided with consensus. I strongly suggest you to dig into what is consensus and how the smart contracts work. So these smart contracts are simple programs which will make sure no double spend happens, and consensus will make sure there are no duplicates.
Which cryptographic algorithm is used in blockchain?
So currently for Ethereum, there are a lot of cryptographic algorithms we are using. SHA-256 is mostly used. Ethereum is already using SHA-256. You have MD6 and all. You can choose depending on the kind of security level that you're offering. So SHA-256 is commonly used.
How Merkle hash tree is used to store the transaction in each node?
So it just makes sure there is an interrelation between each and every block. As I told you, we will be storing the previous block information. So when we run a consensus, it will check each and every hash, and the hash is legit, and that hash can be reproduced from other hash. So thus that tree will actually help you to make sure there is the blocks are interconnected properly. Because let us say I created a block. I'm a node. Okay, I created a block, and that block, I broadcasted that block and told everyone that okay, this is a legit transaction. Store this at your end, so that the user will be okay with it. So this tree will actually help you to make sure the block that you're adding is actually legit or not by comparing the hashes or regenerating the hashes, just to make sure the interconnectivity is proper.
Why hash of previous block is required?
It offers a lot of security. So it is kind of a very big logic. So I think it would take a lot of time for explanation. But what I can say is, if you change your data, your hash changes for a particular block. If this hash changes, you created the next block by using this hash. If this changes, your next block's information would change. So at a particular node, all this information is getting changed as a chain reaction. right? So because one is dependent on the another. So when you run a consensus, and when you are checking whether the chain is valid or not, you can easily identify that, okay, there is something wrong here, because the information that I have, the block hash that I have, and the block hash these guys are having is totally different. That cannot happen. Either my information got corrupted or his. Then you look at other nodes. Okay, you'll ask them, okay, what is the information that you're having? Are you having the same hash? You just do a comparison. So that interrelativity will actually do two things. One, it will make the life of hacker very tough, because with that interrelatability, you need to a hacker need to have a lot of time to crack into a block. And if the block information is changed, the whole chain will be affected, and it will be easily, you can raise a red flag first of all. So that interrelativity will help you in that way.
If security is the only issue, for that, banks not only storing data via distributed databases, but also to their more secure mainframe systems. So then, what is the need of blockchain in bank?
What if the bank itself wants to manipulate the information? That's the whole point here. Forget about security attacks. What if I'm a bank? Okay, I established a bank. I have 5 lakh depositors. I have 500 crores of rupees. And what if I just want to fly away? I just delete the complete database and I can just fly away. So what can I do? I have the whole access to the database. So I just don't want to give information over there, right?
At which platform we can do programming for blockchaining?
You can use, there are various different frameworks, various different decentralized application frameworks. I would suggest, actually there is something, let me give you the link. Just Google Remix Ethereum. So there is this virtual environment where you can run your smart contracts and you can do programming. There is the programming language that you can, I would suggest Ethereum, because it is very simple to do the setup and start off your programming. So try out with Remix Ethereum. Just Google it. You'll get your first URL will be that virtual environment. And the coding, coming to the programming standpoint, you can use Solidity. Solidity just uses the concepts of JavaScript. So if you are acquainted with JavaScript, then it would be very easy for you to run Solidity programming, and you can create your own smart contracts, and you can do a lot of stuff. It is endless. Or you can use Hyperledger as well.
Can we make something like decentralized internet?
Yeah, blockchain itself is decentralized internet. Your deep web is already there. You can actually do transactions on your deep web if you have an address, if you have a proper web address. It is already existing and it was there from a longer time. Your deep web actually uses Bitcoin, anonymous transactions. Yes, I can't say this, but people are buying guns and drugs over there, for your information. And if you, I think you should have seen a few days back, your Zoom accounts actually been compromised. I'm not sure. Don't worry about this meeting, but yeah. So actually been compromised, and all this information is kept on deep web just for 50,000 rupees. And no one knows who sold, who bought. That is the reason why Indian government actually put some restrictions on cryptocurrency trading before. Now the restrictions has been, just kind of little neutralized. Yeah.
What is the difference between coin and token?
So it is just a terminology. So token is just like shares. Coin is like currency. You can just draw an analogy like that. So tokens are like, here the tokens are basically comes under, like, if there is an organization, if you want to give shares, there is something called ICO, initial coin offering. So in ICO, so your currency will basically be your coins, and tokens are the shares of a particular asset. So you can do actually trading on your cryptocurrency platforms as well. So your tokens you can draw an analogy with your share value of a particular asset. Digital asset.
Presently, which cooling mechanism are using?
I'm really not sure about the cooling mechanisms. I am not having those on my fingertips, but yeah, I will provide this information. Just reach out to me. I will provide this information for sure. We can get in touch. Even I'm doing some research around that, the hardware side of it. So just reach out to me. Whoever asked this question, I'm not sure who asked this, but yeah, we can just study together. Maybe even I want to learn. I'm still learning. Actually, it's still evolving. I don't know a lot of stuff around blockchain. I need to learn a lot. It is pretty huge. Yeah, I will clarify that. Yeah.
We have also received some message that they are doing research on this technology.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
maybe you can share your email or
Definitely.
something like
Yeah,
that.
it is already on the screen. You guys can reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Can tracking system during product delivery implement blockchain?
Yeah, absolutely. So your smart, I think I already mentioned that example. Your smart contract can do that. The whole, you can use IoT. You can basically make the whole supply chain automated, and all this information will be stored permanent. So you'll be aware of which kind of medicine you're getting. What are the lead levels? Are there any excessive lead levels in your medicine? In any chemical compound that you're using, you can get that in kind of information in a very specific manner, in a very trustworthy manner, because no middle party can change that information. No one can dupe that information, and also you can avoid duplication of the products. Yes, this
What
whole
is the
supply.
difference
Yeah.
between
Yes,
what
yes,
is
yeah.
the difference between normal database and distributed ledger?
Distributed ledger is not owned by your database; is owned by a central party. Your distributed or use decentralized, that would make more sense. When I use this interchangeably, but use decentralized. So decentralized is something which is not owned by anyone. It is everywhere. It is public.
What are the applications of blockchain in AI?
AI, see, you can do anything basically once you have a legit data set. So AI is all about, most of the part of AI is all about you having a legit and proper information. So you can basically, as you can see, blockchain is just, you're just storing information. You can store a legit information over a blockchain, and you can put any kind of information. As I told you, if you are running a proper speech recognition system on AI with deep learning, you store all the legit voices over your blockchain, all the music files over there. So you can basically do anything. Only the data storage changes. That's it. Yeah, you can basically implement anything. Yeah.
Why can't one node disconnect from blockchain network and sell the data as it has hash also to open the block?
Very good question. So if a node wants to dupe the information, so what your consensus does is it will check every time what each and every node is having. All right, and there is this algorithm where the longest legit chain will be helpful for us to replace the complete chain. Let's say there is one node who's trying to manipulate the information, and he wants to broadcast this information to each and every node, and wants to change the information. So in those cases, what you do is you our hashes and interrelation between each and every blocks will come handy in this case, where you just check what is the genesis. There is something called genesis block. So you check the genesis, you check each and every hash whether it is legit or not. Only if the chain is valid. If the chain is not valid, you will replace that corrupted chain at a particular node with the chain that you have, or you just evict that node completely if it is not trustworthy. And moreover, if they want to make any manipulation around it, they need to run the proof of work in reverse. Actually, your proof of work will consume lots and lot of computation power. Okay, just dig into proof of work, what it is. So programmatically, I can't just dig into it now. So it takes a lot of effort to even re-engineer the proof of work. So it is even tough for a node to try to manipulate the information, and they don't effort to do it, because the outcome that they get after doing a bad practice is nothing. So they don't really try to do it.
Thank you, Revan sir. We have
Yes,
some
sir.
more
Yeah.
question, but
Yeah.
as we are running out late.
Yes, I think we can just save this chat. Just send it to me. If there are any questions, I'll just address them and I'll post it somewhere so that
Yes,
it
so
will be
there are
available.
lots of questions. 61
Yeah.
questions are still
Oh my
pending.
god. Okay, I'll just try to answer them in the next 5 days for sure.
Yeah.
So even probably I can learn something. Probably I can get a new perspective. So I'm very curious to look at those questions. Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. So I think we already exceeded 4 minutes. So I'm sorry for that. But yeah, thank you
Yes.
so much, guys.
Yes.
So please get in touch with me if you have anything. I'm very happy to help.
Thank you, Revan sir. Now, Juhi ma'am.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
It was indeed a privilege to have Mr. Revant Kumar, who is
I'm
an
so sorry, but
eminent co-director at. Sorry, sir.
Juhi, just a second. There is an announcement to make that anyone who has not received
Sure, sir.
certificates, there is a email ID that I have already provided on chat box. Please send your email IDs there. We'll be able to send it off the line. I'm so sorry for the disturbance. Thank you.
That's okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Such
Yes.
insightful animational webinar on blockchain. Thank you on behalf of all the webinar, and I would also like to thank the IT team of Audio University for organizing such an informational webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you, Revant sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sunil, for inviting me. I really appreciate the efforts of your team, and you're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Revant sir.